recently some green apples have decided that they don't like being called green.
That's crazy, because recently some eggplants have decided that they're apples, and I think that's what's really bothering everybody.
They say that it's offensive and that they prefer to be called biological apples.
Well, that's funny, because all the apples I've been hearing from have been saying that they prefer to just be called apples.
But if you call a green apple a biological apple, then you're indirectly saying that red apples are just pretending.
Okay, let's cut the poop, Lily. Red apple or green apple is still an apple. The comparison you're making between red and green apples is more like a race comparison than a trans versus biological comparison. Because I will repeat, you are still just talking about different types of apples. But if we're being 100% honest, a man will never be an apple, just like a man will never be a woman. That's why I'm making the eggplant to apple comparison, because they're two different things. And if you think I'm taking it too far by referring to trans people like you as eggplants instead of apples, it might make you feel better to know that an eggplant is still a fruit. It's just not an apple.
Like they're not actually apples or weird somehow, and that's simply not true.
Okay, LilyTino, to combine both of our analogies, we had gotten to a point where almost nobody thought eggplants were weird until they started trying to take the place of apples. And for a minute there, some people were even fine with the fact that certain eggplants wanted to identify as apples. And many of us were even standing up for the eggplants that wanted to identify as apples because they just wanted to present as apples and live their lives just like everybody else. See, because there were a lot of people that didn't even realize eggplants were a fruit. A lot of people thought eggplants were a vegetable. And eggplants were saying, no, I'm actually a fruit. And then eventually some people said, okay, I get it. You're an eggplant, you're a fruit, but you want to identify as an apple. And then at a point, certain eggplants said, you're not getting it. I don't identify as an apple. I don't present as an apple. I am an actual apple. And then they started thinking that they could tell apples how to be apples. And then they decided they wanted to use the apple bathrooms, the apple locker rooms. They wanted to compete in apple sports, and that they belonged in all the apple spaces. And then they started to tell straight men that straight men had to either date eggplants or at least be open to dating eggplants, because eggplants are the same as apples. And straight men were like, I don't like eggplants. I don't want to have to pretend I like eggplants. I don't want to have to pretend that I see an eggplant the same as I see an apple. I'm only into apples. And then since these certain eggplants were so insistent on the fact that they were apples, a few apples said, okay, well, if you're now apples, then what are we? And then eggplant said, oh, simple. You're a cis apple. And then apple said, the hell I am. I am not a cis apple. I am just an apple. And you are being demoted all the way back to being an eggplant, because when people were nice enough to let you identify as an apple, some of you decided to try to completely take over what it meant to be an apple. And now the apples don't want eggplants in their spaces at all. Now a lot of the apples don't even want the eggplants to call themselves apples on any level. And a lot of the eggplants like yourself say, you're eggplantophobic. And then a lot of the apples and supporters of the apples said, I am not eggplantophobic. I'm just not going to pretend that an eggplant is an apple. And I'm especially not going to pretend that an eggplant is more of an apple than an actual apple. And I'm certainly not going to take lessons on what it means to be an apple from an eggplant that no matter how hard they try will never be an apple. And this is where we are now. What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so I know LilyTino is technically still on break. For anybody that's not familiar, I'm sure most of you are, but that is LilyTino, aka Buffalo Grills.
She, her.
Okay.
AKA I got rid of my cake pops.
I got my cake pops removed.
AKA Pennywise. And I decided to title this video LilyTino versus cis women, which if you know me, I don't use the term cis at all. So don't get mad at me, ladies. The reason that I decided to use the term cis women in this particular video is because there is a point in this video where Lily uses the term cis, which women have already said they don't like the term cis. They don't want to be referred to as a cis anything. They are just women. Most of the world understands that. Most of the world gets it. But what I find ironic is people like LilyTino that tend to want the most respect as being women, even though they're not women, insist on using the term cis. And to me, it's such a small, petty battle to have with people that are telling you what they do and don't want when it comes to the way that they're referred to. And for a long time, a lot of women were supporters of trans women. For a long time, a lot of women have been supporters of LGBT in general. So to really come back and spit in women's faces by calling them something they don't want to be called, while on videos like this, LilyTino insists on talking to women like they're children. Because the whole condescending, I'm going to explain to you what it is to be a woman using apples, is to me how you would explain something to a child that doesn't understand what it means to be a particular thing. But again, you have to remember that this video that LilyTino made is directed at women. So not only do you think you have to transplain to women what it means to be a woman and what the difference is between a woman and a trans woman, but also that you have to transplain it to them like their children, is not only condescending, but also very insulting. And that's what people like LilyTino do not get, is that in videos like this, you're not only explaining to women what it is to be a woman, what women should accept, what women should be putting up with, but you're also saying, and this is what you're going to be called on top of it. And that's where a lot of the friction comes in between trans people like LilyTino and women. Oh yeah, before we go any further, please do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. When you hit the subscribe button, click the bell, select all notifications so that you know every time I upload. But for now, let's continue with LilyTino transplaining to apples why they should be fine with eggplants, deciding that they're the new apples.
The word green is just an adjective that modifies the noun apple. Adjectives are important because they tell us about the differences between two similar things.
Yeah, and the adjective used to be trans, therefore trans apples, which trans always let us know that trans apples were not technically apples. They just wanted to look like and live as apples, even though we knew, and most importantly, they knew, that they were trans apples and not apples.
Just like chocolate can modify ice cream or pepperoni can modify pizza.
Well, the problem with this is you're right. There are different flavors of ice cream, but yogurt is not ice cream. It may look like ice cream, but yogurt most definitely is not ice cream. And when it comes to pizza, you're right again. Different toppings do modify pizza, but I think this is the better example, because Taco Bell has something called a Mexican pizza, which we all know is not a pizza. We allow Taco Bell to call it a Mexican pizza, and we'll even refer to it as a Mexican pizza ourselves when we order it. But we definitely know that a Mexican pizza is not a pizza. There's only one actual pizza.
No one's saying that there isn't a cosmetic difference between these two. I mean, look at them. And yes, they do have slightly different DNA.
Okay, you're still comparing apples to apples, which different colored apples do have slightly different DNA due to selective breeding. But one apple of one color's DNA is still similar to another apple of a different color's DNA, where an eggplant's DNA is completely different from an apple. I mean, if you ask me, you're not really good at this, Lily, and you're not really making your point.
But it's impossible to argue that green is more of an apple than red. And why would you argue that in the first place?
Well, nobody is arguing that at all, Lily. We all know that apples of different colors can still be apples. What people like you don't seem to understand is that eggplants cannot be and will not ever be apples. I don't know how else to say it other than telling you that what a lot of us are saying is that this is not an apples to apples comparison.
It's not like the existence of red apples takes something away from green apples. If anything, apples would be stronger as a group if they united against banana misogyny.
I'm glad you brought up banana misogyny, because you literally are banana misogyny. And you can put a dress on a banana, it's still a banana. You can put a banana in panties, it's still a banana. You can invert a banana, it's still a banana. And a banana or an eggplant trying to tell an apple what an apple is and what an apple should go by is by definition banana misogyny. Because everything that you're saying in this video is implying that anything can be an apple with the right outfit. I swear, you're one of the most exhausting people online, and you don't even realize it.
So to all the green apples out there, us calling you cis, I mean green, is not an insult, I promise.
Well, if eggplants would just stop trying to be apples, we wouldn't have this problem. And maybe if eggplants would accept that they're not apples and they'll never be apples, maybe eggplants would stop trying to end it all over the disappointment of never being able to be actual apples.
Just like you calling us trans, I mean red, is not an insult either. It's just an adjective. Red apples are your sisters, not your competition.
I think that's what you don't understand in all of this, Lily, is that red apples don't have a problem with green apples, and green apples don't have a problem with red apples. What they don't want to have to compete with are eggplants, even if those eggplants have chopped off their banana or had their banana inverted. Now go do something with yourself, LilyTino. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. As always, I appreciate you watching. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.